when I travel, I'm looking for immersing myself into a local experience rather than seeing the tourist going to the tourist traps. And I
Mm.
do that sometimes, but I'm more interested in absorbing my environment and really feeling like I'm in a different place.
Hello, Rose. Thanks so much for joining us today. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, the pleasure is all mine because we're going to talk about interesting topic, traveling, but traveling through visiting record stores. And I was like, first time I heard this subject that you mentioned it in the emails, I was like, that's something that we never talk about. That's something in a way unique because there are still people that collect record stores. There are still people that prefer not to download songs, not to buy CDs, not to, do that, not to watch, to listen to music on YouTube, but to have their collection of record stores. So it's, for me, it's a really massive pleasure to talk to somebody who is keen on these things. So before we jump in and talk about record stores, because you're a DJ, can you tell us a bit more about yourself? Now, where are you from? Where do you live? What do you do?
Sure. I am from Los Angeles and I'm a DJ, but I also do a lot of other stuff.
Oh, oh.
Um, yeah, so I'm a DJ. I'm from Los Angeles. I'm also a bookkeeper. I'm also a Reiki practitioner.
What
So
practitioner, sorry?
Reiki, it's a form of healing. Um, it's a Japanese form of healing. So I'm a Reiki practitioner. Um, and yeah, I do the DJ thing. I'm also an amateur podcaster. I'm still kind of getting my podcast together. So
Okay,
yeah,
is your podcast about being a DJ or a practitioner or both?
it's about neither actually.
Mm. You're
My
so
podcast
diverse.
is
I
about
love
it.
it.
Yeah, it's just exploring something completely different.
Okay, so first of all, what's your podcast about?
It's called Senses and Sensibilities, and it's about exploring our human senses. And each season is dedicated to exploring a different sense. And I have interviews with people who work in fields that correlate with each sense. So, like, let's say for sound, I talk to a musician, somebody who does recording, somebody who's deaf. So, just different aspects of those senses and just try to have like interesting conversations about what makes us human.
Well, that is a great. I think that's a great idea. Really great idea.
Thank
You
you.
said each season, so you're starting first season now. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
beautiful. We're gonna link your podcast in the description, so anybody
Thank
who's curious, go and check it out. But I'm curious now about this practitioner thing that you mentioned. Can you explain to me quickly because I never heard about that? Like, what is all this about?
Sure. No worries. So Reiki is a Japanese form of healing, and essentially it's channeling source energy. So you can call it God, you can call it source, you can call it universe, nature, channeling energy that's bigger than ourselves and being a straw essentially for that energy to come through and give to other people. So it's not me who's doing anything. And it's a very relaxing experience for the most part. Some people fall asleep, some people go into deep meditation, some people have out of body experiences, some people don't experience anything. So it just kind of depends. But the results are wonderful and it's very subtle. There's no magic involved. You just get to have a nice hour off of your day.
When you said people falling asleep, I just remember my yoga experience, my first yoga experience. I fall asleep. At the end, when they say, okay, let's relax. And I'm like, oh, okay, we finished. Yeah, I fall asleep. But anyway, okay, that was brief introduction. Really interesting, really well introduced, but at the same time, you left the door open for us to, I'm curious to know more. So I'll definitely go and dive more into your socials, but uh, starting the subject of record stores. So why don't you hook us, I know before we dive deeper, but why don't you hook us about all these concepts and what's your ideology and belief?
Well, I love to travel, and anytime I travel, I make it a point to find local record stores. And one, obviously, because I want to collect music that I might not be able to find here, but also I've found it to be kind of a hub to make friends or connect with locals that otherwise I might not run across. So it's kind of a unique way to navigate a city instead of going to like tourist destinations like the monuments or the city squares. I'm going into the back alleys to the record stores to find music, but also other experiences. And through those experiences of trying to get to the record store, that's a whole other story. And some of my greatest moments traveling has been in pursuit of finding vinyl. So it's a great way to navigate a city.
Hmm. So, okay, how all this started? And do you have a big, okay, so many questions, Pavel, but let's start one by one. How this all
Okay.
started?
Well, I've been DJing for 10 years, and I've been essentially making it a point to travel to record stores no matter where I go since I first started. Um, and anytime I go to a different country, I will look in like local listings or ask around and be like, hey, like, where's the local record store? And after the first few that I did, I started to see a pattern that I found really interesting people that were willing to talk to you, whether or not they speak English or not. They're always very friendly and very forthcoming. And I feel comfortable because there's this common language of music. And I'll be like, okay, so where do I go for the best meal in town or recommend a cool bar? Where are the clubs, cool bookstores? So when I travel, I'm looking for immersing myself into a local experience rather than seeing the tourists going to the tourist traps. And
Hmm.
I do that sometimes, but I'm more interested in absorbing my environment and really feeling like I'm in a different place.
That's very beautiful what you said, because basically you're looking for the connection points. You're really keen on music, right? And when you go somewhere at these record stores, you have at least one thing in common with the people in the record stores. So you
Yeah.
use that to hook them in a conversation, and then you're like, oh, by the way, what's a good place to eat in, right? Oh, by the way, like, where do you hang after work? Then you go to the bars that locals actually hang around. I use that the same thing, but I go to walking tours. So I go to walking tours and I ask the people over there. So I always stay after the walking tour. And I was like, oh, okay, by the way, what do you think we didn't talk about, but it's worth knowing as
Yeah.
somebody who's new in the city? Like, oh, you know what? I didn't mention that place where you can eat the best the best paella in the city, right? It's over there, and it's great. So do you have a big collection of record stores?
Like ones that I specifically target.
Yeah, like, okay, so how is this process happening? Like, let's say you're traveling to, I don't know, Paris. Like, do you
Yeah.
Google in advance best record stores in Paris, or do you go and ask people for that, or what's the process?
Well, depending on the country, if I have friends or family in that country, I will ask them first.
Beautiful,
And
yeah.
now, thankfully, we have a thing called cell phones. So it's actually a lot easier. Yelp listings, Google listings have
Mhm.
streamlined the process. But prior to having a phone, when I would travel to countries, it was literally word of mouth. Like I would ask somebody who maybe was wearing a Depeche Mode shirt or something, be like, oh, hey,
Oh, hold on, you're gonna stop them on the street and
yeah,
ask them? Really?
yeah.
That's
I
amazing.
don't have a problem talking to people. I'm not shy in that way.
I love
And
that.
also that's a great way to immerse yourself into a new place as well, is taking a chance and talking to people. And more often than not, they'll know that you're not from around there. So
Mhm.
they're generally very friendly and want to be helpful and be like, oh, like, welcome, and let me tell you about this place, or oh, you want to go to record stores? Well, you got to go here because that's the one no one knows about. And so that's how it usually works for me.
Amazing. So when you go back from a place, you don't buy magnets, you buy records.
Exactly. It's a lot heavier, unfortunately. I always have to pay overage luggage fees
And you have to be
because,
more careful.
yes, yes, it's always my carry-on.
Okay, so what is the record store that it's still in your head after, I don't know, many years? Or which record store is still in your mind? Like, wow, that was amazing experience. Like I met great people there. Like, oh, this is the best record I bought from there. Like, I don't know, something that's still in your head.
That's really hard to say because I've found really incredible music in so many different stores, but my favorite actually has been in the UK because there's so much to explore and it's taken me to different parts of town. And I've always been so amazed that I've been able to find stuff that here would be like triple the, and you just wouldn't see it. So in the UK, especially the stuff that I like is just like, oh, okay, this is old news. We don't care about it. But I get there and it's like £5. And I'm like, oh, I didn't even know that like this exists on vinyl. And I found so many records that way and they're still in my collection. And I treasure those like those moments where you pick it up and you look at the price and you're like you feel like you've done something bad. Like, oh my God, does anybody else know about this? So yeah, I have lots of those moments all throughout England, in France and Germany. So
Okay,
yeah.
so how many vinyls you have in your collection?
Oh, I'm gonna say like 5,000.
5,000? Well,
Yeah,
where do you store them? Because now I imagine like you have a whole wall
I
and
do.
it's like a library type of thing, like shelves.
Yes.
That way, 5,000, that I cannot even imagine that on the wall. How does it fit? 5,000.
Yeah, I have quite a few shelving units in my apartment.
Wow. So okay, so when you decide to listen to music, do you just pick a vinyl and listen to it and you're like, I remember this record store in France.
Yeah, I've definitely had that experience, whether I'm DJing or if I'm at home and I put something on and I'll remember where I bought it and whether it was in a different country or at a concert or from a local record store, I do think about the place because one of the things I love about vinyl is not only is it a physical format, there's always an experience that comes with finding them. And it's very different to a shuffle on a Spotify playlist where you're
Mm.
not thinking about it. With something that's physical, it's very much a time and a place. There's a smell to the record stores. It's like a bookstore too. There's like a very specific smell. There's a very specific way of conducting yourself in a record store. And that language is like this silent language that exists no matter where in the world you are. Like how you shuffle through the records, the courtesy of not like stepping over somebody to like get into their pile. And so yeah, it's like a whole thing.
Oh, okay. Do you have any? So when you travel, right?
Yeah.
That I would assume is your main type of thing, or probably one of the first things that you do. Do you use any other? Because I see it straight away. You're that type of person, and when you travel, you don't go to just take a picture, but you want to experience, the local culture, and that's your first point of view, first point of contact. You're using the thing that you love the most, and that's how you try to connect to the people. Do you use any other techniques to experience the place more?
I mean, food is a great way of connecting with people as well. So I love going to kind of non-popular restaurants, just the random place down the street that looks fucking amazing. And some of the best food I've ever had has been taking a chance. Not just like traveling, even at home here in Los Angeles, like seeing a place in a strip mall that doesn't look like anything, but it's been there for 30 years. And you're like, well, why has it been
Why?
there for 30 years?
Must
So
be a
you
reason.
go, yeah. And then if you go to another country, they're even older, they're 50 years, 60
Yeah.
years older. So, and connecting with the staff that work there, and more often than not, they'll be like, well, you got to try this dish. Like it's off the menu. Only locals know about it. So they'll just bring me stuff. And so it's just bringing like a respect, a curiosity, a kindness into your experiences when you travel, because I feel like Americans get a bad rap as being really loud and disrespectful when they travel. And that is true. I've definitely seen it from other Americans, but I make it a point to not not intrude on my environment so that I can see it untouched and experience it as untouched as possible.
Okay, so I understand what you mean. So basically, go somewhere and you're like, okay, what are the house rules here?
Mhm.
And then you're like, oh, okay, I understand, I understand. Okay, great. So I straight away also see that you don't care about, you just go and talk to anybody. Like you don't care. I know you, I don't know you. You're just gonna start a conversation straight away. So can you share some tips from
Yes.
your point of view? Like what are your opening lines, or
Mhm.
if somebody's shy, how can they break that? Is any tips from your side?
Well, first and foremost, I would recommend, if you have specific things that you want to do when you travel, that's fine. I personally don't like to make an itinerary. I find the magic when traveling happens when you get lost. And it's harder now with phones to actually get lost, because you literally have the ability to look it up on the Google Maps app and redirect yourself. So if there's any advice I can give somebody, is throw your itinerary out the door, and you have no choice at that point but to talk to people and walk into the local coffee shop and be like, I have no idea where I'm at. I'm trying to find this museum, and just see what happens from there. So it's just having a level of curiosity and letting your fear of the unknown taking a back seat, because that's when the magic, that juicy travel magic, happens.
I just thought about that as you said it, because even though I use my phone and I have an itinerary when I travel, I still talk to foreigners, to locals and to strangers.
Mhm.
But I just imagine it as you were describing it. Go somewhere and spend a whole day without the phone. Like,
Yeah.
okay, today, no phone, nothing planned. Let's start
Mhm.
walking.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
I'm actually gonna do that next time I travel. It's a really nice.
Good.
So okay, so how did you start doing that, by the way?
I think because I traveled a lot before having a phone, I'm somewhat wired to rely on my senses. And so, all right, I walked down this street, I saw the street signs. Even if I don't know the language, I remember the letters. So you're more present, and you're
Mm.
just taking in your environment and walking around, and our bodies are so intelligent. We know when we're going in the wrong place. All of a sudden, you're like, oh, I'm walking down the wrong street, or whatever the case is. So, relying on ourselves more, and rather than a phone. Um, I used to have, I'm not even that old, by the way, but I used to have these maps that were like that thick in my car that I would use. They're called Thomas guides. And this was before MapQuest and Google Maps. So if I'm driving somewhere in LA, which is a huge city, I
Mm.
would open up a Thomas guide and look through it and be like, okay, this is the freeway I'm on. So it, having grown up that way, I think it's just more natural to me. But for maybe younger people that are paying attention or listening in, I would just recommend resisting the urge to use your phone as often as possible. You don't need the picture. No one needs to see what the food looks like. You don't need a selfie in front of that. Resist the urge and see what happens. So that's my 2 cents.
That's beautiful. I'm almost tempted to close the episode here because it was a beautiful statement. But I also went back in time when you were talking about this, because when I was growing up and we were going on family vacations with my parents, the day before we traveled, my father will open that paper map. He's like, okay, so we need to get here. That highway is closed. Maybe we can go from here. And he's going to track it on paper map. And I don't collect magnets, but I collect paper maps. This is my thing. I have a bag with paper maps everywhere I go. I open up, this is how I do it. I open up a paper map and it's like circle the locations I want to go and then write something about them, something that I'm really interested about. And then I usually put 1, 2, 3, 1, making it day 1. So day 1, all this here, over there, day 2. So I have collections of paper maps, but yeah, so connected. And if you think about it, if you reach your arm right now, if you're listening or you're watching this, if you reach your arm, most likely you're gonna reach your phone. We are on arm's reach. Our phones are always on arm's reach, which is madness. They are extension of ourselves. So just disconnecting for at least one day, that can do a lot. Beautiful. Okay. Can we have a final statement from you in that case when it comes to this?
I guess with regards to traveling, in order for it to be worth your money, my opinion is don't travel if you are going with a specific agenda. Like if it's for work, fine. But if you are literally going to travel for leisure and to get out of your environment and feel anew, the only way you can really do that is if you allow yourself to be present wherever it is that you're traveling. And when you get to that place, there's different ways to practice being present. One, not using your phone as much, resisting the urge to use the phone, going out of your way to really look around you. You know, in our lives, we're so focused on, we almost have like tunnel vision. Yeah. But when you're traveling, literally look around you, look in the distance and look at people. And my favorite thing to do outside of going to record stores is sitting at a coffee shop, getting a coffee and just literally looking at people and just letting my mind go and absorb. And obviously you don't want to be judgmental, but you just want to like allow yourself to settle. And I think when we travel, it's always like, go, 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 go. We got to do this. We have to do this. But if you're with somebody who's like that, that's fine. But maybe if you can, take 15 minutes out, go to a coffee shop and just sit, take a breath, let the environment, the air, the new air, like just take it all in and leave room for spontaneity, leave room for magic to happen when you travel. Because if you're constantly on your phone, you're going to miss those beautiful moments that you'll remember for the rest of your life.
Beautiful. I remember when I go to restaurants, especially in Spain, I love doing that because Spanish people are usually, they have a lot of gestures and the way they communicate is so interesting. So I just sit on the table and just watch how they communicate between themselves. I find it interesting. Do you do this game when you sit on your coffee shop and you just observe people? Do you do like, okay, this guy is a lawyer, definitely, but he had a rough night. His shirt is not ironed. Do you do this thing?
Yes. Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely. My favorite is being on the subway and just like looking around at who's there and creating stories in my head. And I try to be kind as much as I can, but usually I'm like, I know. Last night you got into some shit.
Okay. Thanks a lot for that talk and for that ending. It was beautiful. I have something for you. Check this out. That was applause from the live audience.
Oh, yay.
Okay. Thanks so much, Rose. It was Great talking to you. I wish you a wonderful day.
Thank you, Pavel. Take care. Thanks for having me. Bye, everyone.